Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.
What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
Get out there, play hard, enjoy those games.
Welcome in to Go Big or Go Home. I am Old Man Troy, joined by the marvelous youngster Kevin Cunningham on the Inner Peak Coffee virtual studio line. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I feel much better this week than I do last week.
There you go.
I battled the COVID. I don't think I'm completely over the COVID, but apparently I'm not contagious anymore. But I still feel a little weak, a little tired. Still don't have a real big appetite, which is fine. I guess COVID is a weight loss program. I lost 8 pounds. I guess I can afford to lose a few pounds as I get older. But, in all reality, feeling better. And, again, I recovered, I would guess, normally. And so I just want to say, actually, this show, I'm gonna dedicate this show to your dad, who I know is recovering from a stroke, and for all those people out there battling COVID in a not-so-normal way. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that it doesn't affect in an air quote, normal recovery. And so my thoughts and prayers go out to all those battling COVID and are trying to get over it, and thoughts and prayers out to your dad. I saw a couple posts on Facebook when I finally this weekend, youngster, I got back on social media. I was gone for a week. Felt like I was gone for 6 months.
Yeah. Funny. Yeah. I appreciate the well wishes. He's doing decent, solid, fine. I don't know if I told you, he came down with COVID like a month ago. So this was like a week or two after he had his stroke. So that was not ideal, but as of a couple weeks ago, he overcame it. So they were able to ship him off to a rehab facility. He's doing a bunch of rehab. So he had...
Yeah, and I saw his post, and he said it's slow, but he's positive. Your Pops is always positive. I love it. I love him supporting the show. Your mom's always supportive, always supporting the show, and all of our wonderful supporters out there. But your mom and dad are always really positive. So that's... I think about that, and then I think about that show where you said you thought you were really depressed. And I wonder, how did it come down the gene line like that?
I don't know. Beyond me.
We got a good show, though, youngster. I mean, it's college football, and COVID is affecting college football. It's affecting college basketball. I know we're talking football today, but Gonzaga, country, had to shut down their facility, and they canceled the whole next week or 2 weeks of games, like their next 2 or 3 games. But it's also affecting college football. We talked about it a lot last week with Ohio State. They can ill afford to have another game canceled, but you never know with COVID. It's out there. But there was a busy weekend in the Big Ten, youngster. Busy weekend. Take it away.
Yes, there was. The one thing I wanted to mention, too, before I forget, not that I probably would forget later in the show, but regardless, I meant to mention this last week. Like, if Ohio State did play Michigan State, they ended up playing Michigan State. And so they got to five games. They're 5-0. And let's say Michigan now, so it's Ohio State, Michigan. Here we go, the game. If Michigan really wanted to be, I'll just say you-know-what. If they really wanted to be you-know-what to Ohio State and really stick it to them, they could just say, we're not going to play. We don't feel safe, COVID, all that stuff. That way, Ohio State...
I think the Big Ten would have to have some documentation if they wanted the COVID canceled. I really do.
I don't know. But the Big Ten should in that situation, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I think those tests are reported back to the Big Ten Conference. They have to be.
But what happens if Michigan were to say... If Michigan were to say, Troy, like, hey, we know that we have not had a good season so far. We're 2-4. Our last game just got canceled. Even if we get to 3-4, we're not making a bowl game. Who cares? We're not going to risk our players' health in potentially contracting this disease. We don't want to play Ohio State.
Well, I think if they said that they feel unsafe and they don't want to risk their players' health and there's no documentation of COVID outbreak, I think it would be a forfeit. I don't think it would be a no contest as in the COVID rules.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe.
Because every school has the right to do that. You have the right to do that even. You have the right to cancel a game at any time, even if it's a non-pandemic. You can say, well, we don't feel safe traveling, blah, 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 this. You can cancel a game anytime you want. That would go down as a forfeit.
Would a team forfeit, like if Wisconsin didn't want to travel in a blizzard to play USC in a random college basketball game in December? Like they just can't fly out? It's not advised that they fly out?
No, again, Kevin, that's a natural disaster or a natural occurrence. That is prohibiting them from traveling. So then in that case, you have to try to reschedule. But if you're just going to flat out call a school and say, well, we don't feel safe, well, okay, it's a pandemic, but according to our test results, you still have a roster.
Yeah.
So I would think that would go down as a forfeit. But I told you the weirdest thing that's going to happen. Yeah, it's a big game. Jim Harbaugh is on his way out. So guess what? All of a sudden, Michigan's going to beat Ohio State, and Indiana's going to the Big Ten championship game. How about that? That would be how they stick it to him. And we joked about it. But just think if that happened. We talk about all this COVID stuff, and then all of a sudden, Michigan somehow pulls off an upset. Hoo-wee! Jim Harbaugh would be flashing the finger up and down the field, all over Michigan, going, goodbye, see you later, I'm going to New York.
I haven't read into it, I guess, but that would be, you want to talk about controversial. Like, Indiana, if they were to win this final week, they would end up 7-1. Say Ohio State lost, so they'd be 5-1. I guess 7-1 compared to 5-1, you can make a better argument. But so Indiana would have the winning percentage. They would, technically have a better record, quote unquote, even though they straight up lost to Ohio State. Ohio State just didn't play enough games, or didn't play as many games, I should say.
No, maybe the tiebreaker would be head-to-head because of the losses.
Maybe. But, based on pure win percentage, Indiana would have a higher winning percentage because they've won more of their games, technically. But
well, Ohio State just needs to take care of business then, youngster, and just win.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway.
Let's move into recap.
Well, one thing I wanted to mention, too, before that, take another, detour here. College basketball, like Troy said, we know college basketball is going on. We're not avoiding college basketball. It's just we're coming down the stretch of college football, and in a normal season, we're able to churn out other shows dedicated solely to previewing college basketball. This year has been different with COVID and the scheduling rechanges and Troy coming down with COVID. It has not necessarily worked out in our favor to do 3-4 shows in a week these last couple weeks. Solely for college basketball, to give you guys truly season previews. And they won't necessarily be season previews. They'll kind of be Big Ten previews. But we're thinking of doing it kind of a week or two from now when football simmers down a little bit, at least. And that way college basketball, the Big Ten, the teams can actually start playing each other, which is in about a week or so. Like Illinois plays Minnesota the 15th. That's what is that?
I don't think we did our preview show last year, youngster, till after the New Year. I think we did it right. I think we even held off through the holiday last year. I'd have to go back and look. But I think we did it after the first of the year, and there had been some conference games played. And when we did our preview, we were talking about the early conference games that were played because they expanded the number of games in the Big Ten in the conference.
Right. You're right.
So they have to play before the holiday break.
Yeah. I mean, they're still playing 20 games, but I think things changed because of how much later the season was starting. The amount of non-conference games got trimmed down for sure. like, I'm just looking at Illinois' schedule here. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 non-conference games this year. That's not, usually you have 10. Like, even though the Big Ten plays 20 conference games, you still usually have 10, 11, 12 other games, non-conference games. This year, like Illinois, they only have, I think it was 7 that I just counted. So, anyway, that's the thing is, like, this, by the new year, Illinois will have played 1, 2, 3, 4 games in conference. So, I mean, we'll see as time goes on. We'll have season previews coming sooner than later.
It's our annual preview show. It'll be our 5th one. 5th annual. Can you imagine? Yeah. Can you believe that, youngster? 5th annual Go Big college basketball preview. That's how it all started. With Big Ten.
Yeah, I still remember 5 years ago, around this time, like you calling me and saying, hey, let's do a Big Ten show every week. And I was walking around my little complex in Orlando at the time when I was renting an apartment over there. And since then, I mean, I've moved a couple times. You've moved across the country. But we're here. We're still doing the show 5 years later.
Yeah.
So,
yes, we're doing more than just the Big Ten show, too. If you want to listen to other shows, find us on Twitter at Youngster Old Man. And again, within those 5 years, we have a wonderful virtual studio line sponsor, Inner Peak Coffee Company. So make sure you check those out, innerpeakcoffee.com. Especially now, holiday flavors are out, shipping right to your door. You can't ask for more, especially if you live in the Midwest, Northeast, when it's getting cold. You don't want to have to run to the store just for coffee. Go to innerpeakcoffee.com. Check out all their goods. And it's gourmet, freshly blended when you order it. All right, take it away, youngster. We got a busy Big Ten weekend.
Yes. One more thing. One other side thing with college basketball.
What is up with you today? And one more thing.
One more thing.
You're like a little kid. You're like a little kid wanting licorice. I give you one piece, then you take 2 pieces, now you want a third piece of licorice.
Try, give me one more. One more piece of licorice. For college basketball, I want to say this. Week 3. So some teams have played like 3 games, 5 games. Tennessee's actually played 0 games. I guess they've had a huge COVID outbreak that I'm unaware of. But I'm just looking at the top 25. I just want to give a very quick glimpse here. Iowa is ranked 3rd in the country, for those that have no idea what's going on in college basketball right now. Iowa's ranked 3rd. Illinois is 6th. For the Big Ten, Wisconsin's 13.
Yeah, they fell from 4. Tough loss to Marquette. You and I were talking about that before the show.
Yeah. Rutgers is 21. Ohio State's 22. And then you've got a number of other teams: Michigan, Indiana, Maryland, receiving votes.
It's gonna be a competitive one. I can't wait to preview it.
Yes. Oh, and Michigan State's 4. I don't even think I mentioned Michigan State. Iowa's 3, Michigan State 4, Illinois 6. And Wisconsin just dropped from 4 to 13.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 4 really good teams in the Big Ten you got there. So, anyway, very excited for college basketball season to truly get, churning. Illinois, by the way, plays Duke on Tuesday night. So, I don't know if people will be able to listen to the show before Tuesday night because we're recording on Monday night. But regardless, Illinois plays Duke Tuesday. That'll be an interesting one just to see how it plays out. Anyway, college football. Finally.
Finally. You sure you don't want more licorice?
There's no more licorice, Troy. College football. Ohio State. Ohio State is ranked 3rd. Indiana's up to 8. Which, again, I mean, it could be interesting if chaos ensues. Ohio State loses to Michigan. Indiana plays for the Big Ten title. They win the Big Ten title. Some teams ahead of them lose. I guess it's possible Indiana has a shot at the playoff, but it's unlikely.
No, we'll talk about Ohio State's chances of losing when we get to that game.
Yeah. Northwestern's 15. Iowa's 19. Wisconsin's 25. You know who's 24, Troy? There's a lot of interesting teams in this top 25, but Wisconsin's 25, and this has to warm the heart of the coach who's coaching team number 24 right now. Do you know who's ranked 24th?
I have no idea. You know me. I love these rankings. I follow them with a passion.
Again, the hint was being one game above or one ranking above Wisconsin at 25. 24 is Buffalo, Troy.
Oh, Buffalo.
There we go.
Our main man over there. We still got to try to get him on the show. He likes both of us. We actually personally know the coach. Like, we actually personally can say we know, like, we're on a first-name basis with the coach from Buffalo.
Yeah.
Like, I had him on the show. I had him on Red Light Sports Ramble. You actually worked with him closely at UW-Whitewater. I mean, he actually, like, if we called him up, like, I emailed him, 2 years ago, we were going to try to have him on the show. Like, he actually knows who I am. He knows who you are. That's pretty cool. Because when he's in a Power 5, at a Power 5 school, and we got to try to navigate all the media people, we got it in. Like, we know the guy. Like, hey, we're not just some yahoos. We know him.
I was truly.
That's good for Buffalo. We knew he'd do a good job there, youngster. We knew he would.
Yeah. Yeah, he's gotten a couple guys to the NFL, which is, can't say it's impossible at Buffalo because it's happened before, guys like Khalil Mack, obviously. But he's doing well. He's putting together a bunch of winning seasons in the short years that he's been there. To me, it's just a matter of time until he goes to a Power 5 school. Hopefully it's one in the Big Ten. But in any case, I was going to truly reach out to him, Troy, this off season, going into the college football season, because Buffalo was supposed to play Ohio State. I think that was
Make a note, youngster. With COVID going on, I mean, to be honest, to call and interrupt things, especially with a COVID year, probably would have been, I don't want to say uncomfortable, because he's such a nice guy. He would have taken time to come on our show. Let's make a note, though, after the college football season is done, to get him on the show to talk about all of the things that went on during this football season with the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to hear it from a D1 coach. So there you go, folks. Sometime probably in January, maybe a little later. I'm sure you'll want to take a couple weeks off, but sometimes in January, we're going to have the head football coach from Buffalo on our show, and I can almost guarantee that, youngster. Almost guarantee it.
Yep.
All right.
Me as well.
Let's get back to the Big Ten now. Now the bag of licorice is done. It's gone. There's no more licorice. All gone.
I'm sad. I'm sad by that. Okay, seriously. Saturday's games, I was working throughout the day, so my apologies. I've only read.
I was on my last day of quarantine. I watched a lot. A lot.
Good. Give us all the insight on every single play and every single game, Troy. Ohio State.
Every penalty flag, every bad call.
There you go.
Got it. All in the noggin.
All the calls that ruined teams' chances at winning. It's all the refs' fault. Ohio State beat Michigan State. Not really the refs' fault there. They won by 40 points. Justin Fields had
how
a
do you
really
say
good
they
day.
beat Michigan State? They pummeled Michigan State. And I was mad. And I was actually mad at the end of this game because it scrolled on the bottom that they had to wait until the game was over to go to the Wisconsin game. And I'm like, they're up by 40 points. Just cut out of the game. Who cares? You don't have to go to the end of the game.
Yeah.
My gosh, I know it's contractual, but jeepers. Is anybody but an Ohio State fan now watching this game? Like, I actually turned the channel because I'm like, I don't want to watch this crap anymore.
Yeah, and I know I'm not this unbelievable diehard bleed scarlet and gray Ohio State fan.
Well, you kind of are.
But kind of, but like I would have rather seen the start of Indiana-Wisconsin as opposed to the fourth quarter or later of Ohio State-Michigan State. At that point, I don't care. They won by 30-plus, great. Show me Indiana-Wisconsin. That's obviously a better game. That's just me. Some Ohio State fans would say, no, I want to watch
I was like yelling at the TV.
Yeah, I'm sure you were, but
just 10 days of stir craze. I mean, I was. If we would have done a show Saturday, you probably would have got real. You probably would have got real worked up, old man. Being penned up in a bedroom for 10 days. It was not fun.
Yeah.
Ventured out once in a while.
I also want to shout out my wife on this computer. I have about 7 hours of battery when this computer is not plugged in. My old computer, the one I still kind of use sparingly.
7 minutes?
That battery lasts. What's that?
The last 7 minutes?
Yeah, pretty much. I think 15 would be pushing it. It's ridiculous. So anyway, I'm happy to have this computer unplugged and I can just, throw it to the sky and it doesn't matter. Not sure why I would do that, but anyway, this game, Troy, Ohio State, Michigan State. I mean, I don't honestly have anything. Again, I've read on these games and what kind of went down and whatnot, but
it just comes down to talent on this one, youngster. I mean, Ohio State missing people because of COVID, missing their coach. Who cares? It's Michigan State.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I know they're going to go out and they're playing hard for their first-year coach, but it's a talent thing. I mean,
yeah.
Did a Michigan State fan really expect that game to be closer than what the score was? I didn't. I figured it would be a blowout. We'll never lock big-time spreads just because we don't know what's going to happen in garbage time. But Ohio State went out, and here's the thing, youngster. We talked about Ohio State and the uncertainty about playing games. They've got to make an impression on the football committee. They have to because they just haven't played enough games. I mean, they're sitting there at 5 games. That's it. So when they go out, and I expected them to pour it on because they need to make an impression on the committee. Like, hey, we can do it without our starters. Look how good we are. Just because of the lack of games. I expected them to keep pounding the ball. And they did. They did. They kept pounding Michigan State into the ground over and over and over. And they did it for a reason. They have to make an impression on the committee. That's all I got from that game. It went as Ohio State needed it to go.
Yeah. That, as long as they go 6-0, beat Michigan, win the Big Ten title game, they'll be 7-0. There's no way they get left out. I know other teams can have gaudier records and better victories because they played more games and this and that, but there's no way Ohio State at 7-0. There's no way they're being let out of the college football playoff. It'd be one thing if it was a question, if they were a top 4 team, like, I don't know, them or Notre Dame, I'm not sure. Like, there's not really a question if you just truly, honestly sit there and rank the teams out based on talent and who would beat who. Like, Ohio State is a top 4 team. They may not be the best, but they're a top 4 team. I think everyone can understand that. Now, you can make a case for a team that goes, 10-1, lost their first game of the season and won out the rest, and they look great. But just talent-wise overall, I don't think there's 4 teams better than Ohio State. I don't. Maybe 1, but that's just me. So, next game. Iowa, Illinois. Illinois was up 14-0 to start this game, and then Iowa. Troy, according to the ESPN headline for this game, number 24 Iowa scores 35 unanswered to beat Illinois, 35-14.
Oh, you had to bring it up. Why do people say unanswered points? Every point has an answer to it. It's called we stopped the other team, we got the ball back, and we went down and we were efficient on offense and scored points. And then they got the ball back, and our defense stopped them again. And again, our offense was efficient and went down and scored more points. It is called 35 consecutive points, not unanswered. There's an answer to points in any sport.
I think
and it's funny you bring that up because last night I texted you after football.
Yeah, I know.
Right before the Chiefs game. Can I stop hearing about unanswered points? Because they're not unanswered. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my
I think
God.
the point to that, phrase is that Illinois is not answering with points of their own. It doesn't really make sense. That's not the best way to put it.
No, because I was better. But they're not unanswered.
Like you said, just say consecutive because that's what it is, and it makes perfect sense. There's
They scored 35 points in a row. They weren't unanswered. Maybe Illinois' prayers were unanswered because they couldn't do anything against a good Iowa defense. That Iowa team is not bad, youngster. They're good. They're good.
Yeah.
But man, they're not on. It wasn't 35 unanswered points. So, okay, move on, because now I'm giving myself a headache.
Illinois' Brandon Peters was doing well, and then he did bad in this game. It was good to see Brandon Peters back, but it was not doing enough to keep up with Iowa after the hot start Illinois had, and then he got yanked for Isaiah Williams, who's talented, but it is what it is there. So yeah, in the end, I was the better team. I mean, that's just.
You were waiting to bring that up, weren't you?
What's that? The unanswered?
You were waiting.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're just keeping that in your back pocket. I stole the licorice from you, and then you're like, "Well, watch this, old man." Bam! Unanswered points.
Yes.
All right, move on. Next game. Unless you got anything else.
Purdue. No, Nebraska-Purdue. Nebraska won this game by 10, 37-27. They now have 2 wins. Purdue still has 2 wins. Purdue has lost now to Nebraska and I think Rutgers a couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, if there wasn't a game in between there. But so Purdue is struggling a little bit, and it's certainly not because of their offense, although it should be said that the running game that started off kind of hot, Xander Horvath had a couple 100-yard games back-to-back to start the season. He's definitely cooled down, like in this game, 7 carries, 21 yards. Obviously not going to get it done.
Which is kind of weird to me because Nebraska does not have a great defense.
No. I mean, Purdue threw the ball all over the place. Jack Plummer, over 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no picks. The 2, I think, truly, they're going to be first-round receivers, David Bell, Rondale Moore. They combined for 23 catches for over 200 yards.
That's great. What was the final score?
Right, they lost 37-27.
It's the thing you bring up a lot of times, youngster, when people just crumple up their game plan and start tossing it around the field. Yeah, you got great receivers on the outside, but you also have a decent running back. And I'm sorry, and I'll even parallel this to the Packer-Eagle game yesterday. We're recording on Monday on the Inner Peak Coffee virtual studio line. The Eagles, Kevin, Miles Sanders was finding some holes. Boston Scott was finding some holes. The Packers' rush defense sucks. And the Packers get up a little bit. They stopped them, held them to a field goal. And it's like, you know what, Doug Peterson, why do you want to continue to throw the ball when you have a crappy offensive line? The Packers are going to sack Wentz. You're going to pull him, put Hurts in. But you could keep running the ball and grinding the clock. Like in the first quarter, they dominated the time of possession, and they were controlling the game. And there was a thought of me that said, "Oh my gosh, the crappy Eagles are going to beat the Packers." Then they started dropping Wentz back, and I'm like, "Oh, here we go, Packers will win." They just got away from it because they didn't want to, and that's what I think Purdue did. Run the ball. It's okay to have a 7-minute drive. It really is. It's okay if your NFL caliber receivers only have 4 catches. It's okay. Yeah. But no, they want to feed them, and they want to just think and get big play and big chunks and big chunks. Well, big chunks and big plays going to cost you wins. Run the ball. They're capable of doing it. They proved it that they could. And again, Nebraska doesn't have a great defense. They would have found some success had they wanted to continue to run the ball. I just don't understand sometimes what coaches are thinking. All right, I'm done ranting.
And I like Jeff Brom. I think he's a good coach. I think he's doing well at Purdue holistically. But when it's Purdue and they want to throw first anyway, and they find themselves down 17-3 in the first quarter, what's Purdue going to do? They're going to sling the ball. They want to pass the ball to begin with. If they're down 2 scores, damn well they're gonna be heaving it. So that doesn't help them.
But again, youngster, my point to this: okay, you're down by 14. It's 2 possessions.
No, I know. My point is, it's Purdue, so they want to throw it anyway. If you give Purdue a reason to throw it, they're gonna throw it. That's my thing.
It's all good.
But
move on.
One thing I want to mention, too, Wan'Dale Robinson, Adrian Martinez can do his thing, at times for Nebraska, and when Dedrick Mills is going on the ground and Wandale Robinson's doing his thing, I know it's Purdue's defense, but Nebraska can put up points. They can score on anybody. They went down the field immediately against Ohio State possession 1 of the season, and it just looked like, oh, damn, this offense is going to be really good. It hasn't turned out that way through 6 games, but you see glimpses. I don't know if that's progression, but, I'm not saying Nebraska's good, but they do have offensive talent. I'll say that much. Next game here, second to last game because there are only 4 games to recap since 2 got canceled. Penn State, Rutgers. Penn State won the game 23-7. To me, it's kind of sad that Penn State only won by 16, not just because on the face of it they beat Rutgers by 16 points, but they ran the ball 57 times. So Penn State clearly did what they wanted to do and controlled the game, and they had 3 guys have at least 11 carries in this game, but they still only scored 23 points against Rutgers. I'm not here to say that Penn State did a bad job and it was a bad game plan and they should have won by more, but, you ran the ball 57 times. You're Penn State playing Rutgers. I would assume, if you just told me they run it 57 times against Rutgers, I would assume Penn State won the game 45-7, not 23-7. But that's just me. Again, Penn State's not that good this year. They're not. They're 2-5 now. So I think, actually, I would have to double check, but does that mean that Rutgers is the last place team in the Big Ten? Does any team have 1 win in the Big Ten? I'm curious. I have to look.
No, I really believe that because Michigan has 2.
No, yeah, everyone at least has 2. You know what's crazy? Everyone has 2 except 4 teams. Every single Big Ten team has 4 wins except Iowa, Northwestern, Indiana, Ohio State. That's it. Every other team has 2. Now, Wisconsin obviously has not played as many games. Maryland has only played 4
Wisconsin's only played 4.
Right. Maryland's also only played 4. Maryland's had a bunch of cancellations. Minnesota's played 5. It's just weird. You've got literally 10 teams that have won 2 games this season, 5 in each division.
It's crazy.
So Penn State, Rutgers, again, I don't have much more on this. Rutgers, I'll say this, that you need to find somewhat of a consistent running game. I think that's the next thing for Rutgers is truly having an identity, maybe getting a go-to back, finding that quarterback that can deliver the ball down the field consistently. Just have an identity. Obviously, they're playing hard. They're playing well enough to win 2 Big Ten games. But I think that's kind of the next step. I think we expect Rutgers to at least compete. They'll still lose to Ohio State by 40, but at least they're competing against the other teams to the point where they can win a couple. So hats off to Schiano in that regard. But I just think that's the next step is kind of having a go-to and something that other teams have to actually game plan for and fear, in my opinion. But
yeah, and they got to beef up the defense. I mean, let's be honest, youngster. In the Big Ten, let's look at the teams that are near the top. Indiana's defense playing well. Ohio State always has a good defense. Northwestern has a good defense. Iowa has a good defense. If you can hold teams to that 20-point range, your offense should be able to score 20 and win. And I know what game we're getting into, and there's a reason I said that. So whenever you want to move on to the last game, go ahead.
Yes. We've got good old Indiana and Wisconsin. Indiana obviously won this game 14-6. No touchdowns from Wisconsin in this game. Again, I was not able to watch it. I was texting.
Yeah, they got stymied in the red zone. I'm not gonna get into breaking it down quarter by quarter, but there's a couple of key things for me. One is the Badgers couldn't do anything when they got down in the red zone. They got stymied. And Indiana did a good job of confusing Mertz. He's a young kid. Talked to my boss. My boss and I were talking since I've been away from work since prior to the holiday. So we were talking Badger football. Mertz is going to be a good quarterback, and it's exciting as a Badger fan. You know, don't give up on the kid. I mean, Indiana had a great scheme for the young kid to confuse him. They even said in the telecast, they're showing one thing but doing another. And the kids played and started how many games? 4? With a bunch of days off in between games?
Right.
So, yeah, guess what? You're going to confuse the young kid. And it was evident. But they got stymied in the red zone, and part of it, going back to what I just said, is Indiana was showing one look. And then when the play developed, they were doing something different from what they were showing. And it just confused them. And being able to go from progression to progression, the offensive line just couldn't hold up at times. The Badgers, and I never make excuses because the Badgers always have a good offensive line. They lost their center in this game, youngster. They lost their starting center. When you lose your starting center on a good offensive line, that disrupts the whole line. It disrupts the whole
year. A first-year starting quarterback for his 4th game starting ever. He wants to have some continuity with the center, right?
Yeah, so because the center's making the calls on the line. So that happened. And again, I'm not making excuses. Indiana outplayed Wisconsin. There's another key moment, though, that the Badgers were actually driving. They got the ball near midfield, and then Mertz got sacked and fumbled. Indiana recovered. Defense couldn't get off the field. Indiana went on a 53-yard touchdown scoring drive. That, to me, right there, when that happened, I'm like, that was not a dagger, but that was like a little dull steak knife getting jabbed into your stomach. Like, that hurts. Because you turn the ball over and you give up a long, well, not a long, but a 53-yard touchdown drive. And for the Badger defense, that's a long touchdown drive. They usually don't give those up. And Indiana played well. Tuttle played very well. They couldn't cover the receivers. The receivers were wide open. But again, we talk about pass rush. Your cornerbacks can't cover somebody for 5 seconds. Doesn't matter who you are. So that was a problem. I didn't think the Badgers consistently were getting good chunks of yards in the running game. They were consistently losing 1st and 2nd down, putting them in 3rd and 7s. Now, again, this was my same complaint with Jack. You know, Jack Cohn. 3rd and 7, make a play. Well, that's when they were disguising stuff. But again, I like what the Badgers are going to have in the future. I like Berger. They got Watson in the backfield. I mean, they're going to be good. Here's what really impressed me, though, youngster, and I believe I text you. The Badgers are down by 8, and the defense dug deep. They dug deep, and Indiana couldn't run the clock out. Usually in college football, you give the ball back to somebody with 3 minutes to go, they're going to run the clock out. Badger defense held. Made Indiana punt. Wonderful punt. Pinned the Badgers inside their 10 on the 8-yard line. 92 yards to go to score, to tie, to score a touchdown and then get a 2-point conversion. Mertz let them down the field, youngster. They had a 4th down incompletion in the end zone. To me, okay, they lost the game, but anyway, they couldn't play in the Big Ten championship this year. I was actually happy at the end of the game because they didn't fizzle out at the 30-yard line. They didn't fizzle out at midfield. Mertz got them down the field. Yeah. And, that sequence down there, okay. Probably maybe some better play calling. I'm not sure that they needed to go to the end zone on 4th down. They could have got another 1st down. Timeouts were limited. Time was limited, so maybe some clock management. But overall, the kid brought him down and gave him a chance to score a touchdown. Haven't seen that in a long time. So I was actually, game was over, they lost. Yeah, it sucked. Somebody jabbed that dull steak knife in my stomach again, turned it around. That hurts. But I was happy with the way Mertz played in the last couple minutes of that game. That was encouraging to me as a Badger fan. So there's my synopsis of the game, youngster.
There you go. I appreciate it. As someone who's not able to watch a second of it. I just a couple of things from me. Berger had. And
Indiana's good. I know I didn't talk about Indiana, but for those listening and know I'm in Wisconsin, I'm a diehard Badger fan, so I gave my synopsis from that end. And I guess I did compliment Indiana, though, the way they played defensively. And the Badgers' defense, Kevin, what was the final score so the listeners know? Some of the listeners might not know. What was the final score to this game?
It was 14-6, and that's one of the things I was going to bring up was, like, from a statistical standpoint, I mean, Wisconsin was 8 of 16 on third down. They held Indiana to 4 of 10. They had more first downs than Indiana. Indiana had 217 total yards in this game. Wisconsin 340. Wisconsin threw the ball better. They ran the ball better. More yardage, more yards per rush. The big thing, like you mentioned, that one turnover. They had one extra turnover. That was monstrous, as you mentioned.
And led to 7 points. That was the monstrous part about it.
Right. That was basically the difference in the game. And then one other thing I want to mention was the penalties. Indiana had 1. Wisconsin was called for 8.
Yep. Does it have red zone efficiency in there, youngster?
It doesn't for the one that the little box score that I'm looking at. But, yeah, that would, I'm sure, be telling, too, because, again, the stats point to Wisconsin's way outside of
you kicked two field goals instead of scoring 2 touchdowns. And
exactly.
So, again, the Badger defense did their job for the most part. They held them at the end of the game. They held them to 14 points, held Indiana to 14 points. That's a good job. Offensively, you only scored 6. So, I look at it from the standpoint that, hey, you know what? Yeah, okay. Young quarterback. But, again, I was encouraged at the end of the game that they had a chance to go down and score. Now, again, they would have had to get the 2-point conversion, and that's no gimme either. But Mertz drove them down the field. That, to me, was very impressive. But, again, Indiana's good. Indiana's a good football team. They're deserving of their record. Allen's done a wonderful job there, and especially the backup quarterback in this game. Did enough.
Yeah.
All right.
Indiana.
We can move on. We can preview possible Big Ten games. I say possible because as we move down the week, we could hear COVID cancellation. We hear it every week in the Big Ten. But let's go down the slate of games, youngster. Take it away.
Yeah, the one I want to start with, since you just mentioned that, Rutgers, Maryland. Again, Maryland's played 4 games this season. So we don't know if Maryland's going to play this game. Indications this second on Monday night can say, yeah, Maryland's going to be good to go. And then they can have a couple positives again during the week, and it's like, oh, Lord, here we go again. And so it can get canceled. So I'm really not going to preview this game a ton. I know the point spread question, I'll give it to you in a second, Troy, but it'd be cool to see this game be played because I want to see more of Maryland. Like, it's been intriguing the 4 games that they've played. They started out like garbage, and then their offensive talent started taking over a bit. They're 2-1 in their last 3 games. So after
two new coaches with these programs, and you got 2 programs that are traditionally doormats in the Big Ten. And I'm not saying that they're lighting the world up, right? But they both have 2 wins. When's the last time Maryland and Rutgers both had 2 wins? I don't think Rutgers ever had 2 wins in the Big Ten.
No, I don't think so. Maryland, I'm sure has these last few years. They've been competitive against some teams. And so year 2 for Loxley, I mean, you see some progression in the games they've played. But again, they've only played 4 games, so hopefully this game gets played. But I'll ask you about the spread, and then we can just move on to the next one unless you got more.
Where's the game at?
It is Rutgers at Maryland.
Rutgers at Maryland. Now, as you were joking in the beginning of the show, this would be the game where Rutgers would say, we don't feel safe going to Maryland for the safety of our players. I mean, that would be more legit because Maryland, like you said, has only played 4 games. But I would say in this game, Kevin, I'm going to give the edge to Rutgers on the road. The reason Maryland has only played 4 games. So, again, I've went through this as a Badger fan, watching the time off. It is hard, especially in college, to not have that practice time. I'm going to say Rutgers on the road by 6.5.
Maryland, let me double-check so that I'm reading this right. I had to go elsewhere. Yeah, Maryland's favored by 9. So
what?
So you're off on that one. Last week you were basically perfect, but you're off.
Yeah, I'll admit when I'm wrong. When's the last time Maryland played, youngster? I'm going to argue with these point people right now. When's the last time Maryland played?
Let me take a look at their schedule. So they played
you got to go back and look.
They played Indiana and lost. That was 2 weeks ago. That was 2 weeks ago. And then prior to that, Troy, prior to that, they had 2 cancellations. They played Penn State week 3. They played Indiana week 6.
Yeah.
Week 7, their game got canceled. So their last 4 weeks, they've played 1 game, a.k.a. in the last month.
How can you favor them by 9 points? I know Rutgers just got beat by Penn State kind of handily, but guess what? Maryland doesn't have the same running game that Penn State has. Guarantee Maryland's not running the ball 57 times against Rutgers.
No.
I'll tell you what, youngster, I think Rutgers wins this game. I really do. If I was able to bet in Wisconsin on DraftKings on Saturday, I would take Rutgers and the points. That's how adamant I am about that. I would put my money on Rutgers, like I would bet real money if I had the opportunity to. But I can't. DraftKings isn't legal in Wisconsin to do sports.
9 points. 9 points is a lot for this matchup. I can understand in certain spots like quarterback and wide receiver, Maryland definitely has the edge. But again, Maryland's played 1 game in the last month and they've scored 11
points.
And
Rutgers is playing hard.
Right.
Yeah, they lost to Penn State, but if any of these odds makers would watch the game, it's not like they went out there and tucked their head between their tail. They went out there and played. They're overmatched by Penn State. They're overmatched by 5-star recruits and 4-star recruits. Maryland Rutgers is as even as you're going to get. That's crazy. I'm trying to banter for a lock of the week, youngster. Let's take Rutgers in the points.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
ding, 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 ding. Licorice for the youngster. Piece of licorice to you. Piece of licorice to you, lad.
Troy, I should let you know, even though you're kidding, I hate licorice. Like, I just, I'm not a fan. But anyway, yes, it's our first lock in like 4 weeks.
I think we're winning that one.
Rutgers +9 at Maryland. We're still hoping to get our first lock of the week correct this year. So that's very sad. But anyway, moving on. Another noon start. So there are 4 games scheduled to start at noon. There's 3 scheduled to start at the 3:30 window Eastern time, just so people know. So this upcoming weekend. Also at noon, Illinois at Northwestern, Troy.
All right, so let's see if I get back on the closeness of picking these spreads. Illinois at Northwestern. Northwestern actually, Kevin, having a good year, not having a bad year, better than we thought, right? But Illinois, they hung in there at Iowa for a little bit and then got smoked. Northwestern, in my mind, probably close to Iowa. So I'm going to say Northwestern at home by 11.5.
Yeah, you're definitely closer here. Northwestern minus 14.5, so they've got it over 2 touchdowns barely. To me that I think makes sense. I would expect Northwestern to win by 2 touchdowns. The question is,
I would, but we have to remember the way that Northwestern likes to play, youngster. They like to they like to pound you defensively, right? They like to pound you on defense, and then they like to play with a lead. And when they play with the lead, what do? They try to run the ball. So, to me, 14.5, that could be right, and they could win by 14. But if Northwestern kind of sticks to their identity and gets a lead against Illinois, they're probably going to try to run the ball and eat up a lot of clock and a lot of yards. That's why I went with 11.5, just over 10.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not going to argue like I did the last game on the point spread because I can see I could see Northwestern winning by 21.
Oh, yeah.
Because their defense is very good, and Illinois seemed to be struggling a little bit. So, and they benched their starting quarterback. So we'll see who starts for Illinois. That could also be part of it. But I'm not willing to lock this one, youngster, just because Illinois to me is kind of like the, I guess, the question mark. Who's going to be at quarterback? How are they going to come on and play? Northwestern's got a good defense. How is this game going to roll out? So I'm not willing to lock it, but I think Northwestern wins.
Yeah. Same here, definitely. I agree. Moving on. Nebraska at home against Minnesota.
Jeez. Nebraska's actually played better last week. Minnesota, again, Minnesota on the layoff. And Minnesota was a team where we said, hey, you need to step it up. This, to me, is a tough one. Let me look out my windshield very diligently. I'm going to say Minnesota on the road by 3.5.
You are wrong once again. I don't know which way I would have guessed, but definitely not this much one way or the other. Nebraska minus 10.5.
What?
Yeah. I know Minnesota.
I'm not even going to debate this, youngster. Let's lock it. Nebraska's good. I don't even want to call Nebraska good. They played better last week.
I was going to say they're not
Minnesota's much better than Nebraska. I'm taking Minnesota in the point. Man, this would be a great parlay for me. Great parlay. I would be able to take Rutgers in the points, Minnesota in the points. I might have to call somebody in Pennsylvania, have them log into my account in Pennsylvania, and actually bet this. And I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. Holy cow. They're favoring. Are you sure you're looking at it right, youngster? Do you need glasses?
Nope.
I mean,
I'm good.
10.5?
Uh-huh.
10.5?
Yeah.
Holy holy. Well, I'm willing to lock Minnesota in the points, youngster. That's up to you. I don't know if you're magically attached to Nebraska, but they're not 10.5 points better than Minnesota.
No,
maybe
I
7.
agree with that.
Maybe 7. Not 10.5.
I don't even think they're 7 points better. I think they can obviously win by 14. I think that's possible, but I think it's more possible that Nebraska wins by under 10.5. That's also an interesting number because it's easy to win games by 10. So, yeah, I'm all aboard Minnesota.
Oh, ding, 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 ding! And I'm going to give you another piece of licorice you don't like, lad. There you go. You got two pieces of licorice over there.
There we go.
No, this is crazy.
Yeah, we're taking two big underdogs, I guess, supposedly. Well, Rutgers plus 9.
You did mention it, youngster, that Nebraska's offense, they can score points. Minnesota, maybe it was the expectations, maybe it was COVID. They came out not living up to what they did a year ago. But Minnesota's not a bad team. They're just not playing well.
Right. They've been a disappointment this year, but Nebraska hasn't been good this year.
No.
They scored 37 against Purdue last week. Congratulations. Minnesota, by the way.
I was calling this a toss-up at 3.5 for Minnesota.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Minnesota also, they can pound you. Like Muhammad Ibrahim has 800-plus yards rushing in 5 games and 13 touchdowns in 5 games. So they'll be able to run the football, assuming this game gets played.
I don't know. Maybe COVID affected the point spread, people.
Maybe. I don't know.
That's even worse than the Rutgers one. Like, we're 3 games in, and I've already ranted twice. And I'm seriously, like I said, I'm seriously figuring out a way to get this parlay done. Like, with real money. I really am. Okay, carry on.
The final, sorry for all the Michigan-Ohio State lovers, and I love my Buckeyes, but I'm not saving them for last. This is the last noon game we'll preview. Ohio State at home against Michigan again at noon on Fox.
I don't care where this game's at. Michigan's terrible. Michigan's terrible. They got pounded by Wisconsin with Graham Mertz. You couldn't do anything against Graham Mertz, a young guy. I like him. But Wisconsin pounded you. Ohio State is, I don't want to say 10 times better than Wisconsin, maybe 5 times better. I'm going to say Ohio State on the road by 20.5.
Ohio State's at home.
Or Ohio State 20.5. Plus 20.5.
They're favored by 29 points. 29-point favorites over Michigan. I would have to look up the last time.
I'm not going to lock it, nor would I put this in that parlay that I'm going to do. But I could see Ohio State beating Michigan by 29. Like, Ohio State's not going to let up on the gas in this rivalry game.
No.
Like, they're going to keep pounding it and pounding it and pounding it. I know we joked about Harbaugh beating Ohio State, but I can't see it happening. I really can't. I went 20 points. No. I figured, you know what, it's an odds maker, but I should have known the way that they've done the other two games that I probably should have said 40. I don't know what they're thinking. This isn't even out of the ballpark. If you're a betting person, this is a trap bet because Ohio State could win by 30.
Oh, yeah.
But they could also win by 28. You just don't know. You just don't know what Ohio State's going to do in these blowout, lopsided games. I know it's a rivalry game, but Michigan is in such disarray that I'm not even bringing that into consideration. Not even doing it.
Yeah, if I had to bet, I think Ohio State wins by 30+. I think they beat normal teams by 30. Michigan's bad this year, and they've beaten Michigan by a lot in the past. And this Michigan team is definitely worse than they've had recently. So I just get my little scary boots on because again it's Jim Harbaugh it's his second to last game because they got to play the crossover game, but his last regular season game, and the way that this season has went, the way that the odds makers are going, all of a sudden, whoa, maybe there's Michigan with a chance at the end to tie it up. Maybe my scary boots are on. Maybe. Just saying. I don't know. Yeah. I think Ohio State should win the game, but the way that this season's going, who knows? Carry on. Yeah. Late games. 3:30, Purdue at Indiana.
Indiana. Well, if they're favoring Ohio State by 29, Purdue probably on the same ground as a Michigan. Indiana not quite on the same ground as Ohio State, but they just beat Wisconsin, held Wisconsin to 6 points, only scored 14. I want to say Indiana by 24.5.
You've been bad this week, Troy, but I don't think you've gone crazy. Indiana minus 9.5.
What?
Yeah, that's like the fourth what we've had so far this week. Indiana minus 9.5. I would. Oh man,
I'll lock it if you want to. I'm thinking about this parlay that I got going on in my head and how much money I want to put on it because I know Purdue has those wide receivers, blah, blah, blah. But guess what? Wisconsin has a guy named Pryor and a guy named Davis that are decent receivers. And Mertz is a decent quarterback. And what Indiana did to Wisconsin, that was pretty impressive. I know that Purdue has a more experienced quarterback and they have better receivers.
Yeah.
But we just talked about why did Purdue not stick to the running game as they lost to Nebraska. They lost to Nebraska.
They lost to Nebraska by 10. There's no reason why they should lose.
Indiana?
Right.
You think Indiana is only going to beat them by 9? These odds makers are crazy this week, youngster. Maybe they need some licorice. Maybe they need licorice. I'm willing to lock Indiana with the points.
So we have Rutgers plus 9. We have, I'm typing this out to make sure I remember. We have, what was the other one? Where did it go? Oh, Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Plus 10.5.
Plus 10.5. We get 10.5, and we're going to give the 9.5 with Indiana.
Yes, we are. So we have 3 locks of the week this week. So hopefully we win one of those.
Well, I hope we win all 3 because I am totally serious about my parlay.
Yeah, I know
what we're picking now, youngster, I'll know if we win. because I will be in contact with somebody that I know in a betting state that's going to place a bet for me on a parlay because I'm liking the odds so far. Next game.
Yes. Again, the one thing I wanted to mention, you kind of brought it up. Indiana, again, they're on their backup quarterback. And if Purdue is able to sling the ball around to their two NFL receivers like the way they have been, they just haven't been able to stop teams. But if you're playing a backup quarterback, maybe that makes things interesting. It's a rivalry game. Purdue has nothing to play for. They definitely want to shut Indiana up because I'm sure all they hear is how great Indiana is this year. So I could see
But Purdue's not that good.
No, I agree. But they can throw the ball very well. That's what they're very good at, is throwing the ball to their NFL receiver.
And Hurts hasn't been bad, though, Young. And again, they did move the ball, but that Indiana defense tightened up in the red zone. I was actually very impressed with that defense because I thought Mertz was better than what he showed. But, again, he's a young kid, and they did a lot of disguising. If Indiana does that against Purdue, yeah, they might score 14, 17 points, but I think Indiana can roll up and down the field against Purdue. All right, we can move on.
Michigan State at Penn State.
I don't even want to guess anymore. I've been so bad this week. Michigan State at Penn State. Penn State just ran the ball 57 times against the Rutgers team. Michigan State, first-year coach. They're like night and day. It's like rolling dice with Michigan State to see what team is going to show up on the field, a team that's going to be able to play or a team that just sucks. I'm going to say Penn State by 9.5 seems to be a nice number. Let's say Penn State by 9.5.
Penn State by 15. So it's definitely more than what you're thinking, but not completely out of the ballpark. So there's that. 15 seems a lot. Yeah, me either. It seems like a lot for Penn State, but at the same time, Michigan State you could see a world in which Penn State wins by 28.
Let me ask you this, youngster. Michigan State or Rutgers, who's better? Question. Who do you think is better? Michigan State or Rutgers? Today, November 7th. Or December 7th. Holy cow, I lost a month.
Honestly, I might seriously go with Rutgers if I truly had to pick. I would rather.
Maybe a tie. Maybe they're even, right?
Yeah.
Penn State just beat Rutgers by 16.
Right.
That's it, 16. You and I talked about it.
Right.
I'm okay with the spread. They could. Penn State passing game isn't where they thought it would be. And the running back situation, they got great running backs because they recruited well, but they're down to their third stringer?
Yeah.
And like you said, they got 4 guys that had 11 carries or more in that game. So, yeah, Penn State might struggle to score. That's why I went low with it.
Right.
I mean, Michigan State, they're going to play hard for their coach. Penn State should win the game. I could see them winning by 10. I could see them winning by 28, like you said, though, because Michigan State is porous.
Right.
I mean, if anybody watched, and I know Ohio State is head and shoulders above everyone else, but, man, you would think you could score maybe some points. No, they're bad. That team was bad on Saturday. But then I've seen Michigan State go out and actually play a decent game. So what team is going to show up? I don't know. That's why I went with 9.5.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm
just way off this week.
Last game. One team that you're always way off on. Wisconsin at Iowa.
Watch me get this right on the head. Just because I'm always off with Wisconsin, I've been off on every game this week. Here we go. At the beginning of the year, Kevin, we thought this was going to be a really big game at the end of the year, and I guess it is a big game for Iowa. I don't want to say it doesn't matter to the Badgers, but it doesn't matter. Win or lose, 3-2, 2-3. I mean, who cares? They're not eligible for the Big Ten championship game. My thing with this, I want to see Graham Mertz rebound from a poor game and see if he takes a step forward. We always talk about quarterback progression, but that Iowa defense, in my mind, Kevin, better than Indiana defense. Badgers only scored 6 points against Indiana. I think it could be a tough day for Graham Mertz, especially going to Iowa. Granted, it's not going to have 90,000 fans in it, but still, tough place to play. I want to say Iowa at home, and I'm going to say, well, the Badger defense is pretty good. I'm going to say Iowa by 10.5.
Woo. Again, off. Iowa -1.
What?
That's the fifth one. It's a common theme here. I list the spread, you say what? That's
Holy
just the way this week is done. I think it's
so.
That
I don't give respect to my Badgers, and then all of a sudden the odds makers say, "Hey, they're going to go to Iowa and they're going to have a chance to win." -1 on the road with no fans. It's almost like they're picking Wisconsin.
You're always too low on Wisconsin, according to the spread. Always, every single
being real.
week. Every single week.
I just gave you every reason in the book why Iowa's going to beat Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I mean,
also,
Iowa's
one
good
thing,
this year.
One thing I want to mention quickly is this is kind of more of a thing that I was talking about before. Is Iowa, if they win this game, they go to 6-2. If Northwestern loses, they'll be 5-2. So winning percentage-wise, Iowa would have a higher winning percentage. At the same time, these two teams played. Northwestern won the game. So do you go by losses? Do you go by win percentage? Does it go to a tiebreaker? If so, then it would go to Northwestern. But at the end of the day, Iowa could say, we won the higher percentage of our games. You shouldn't penalize us because of that. You shouldn't help Northwestern because there could be a lot of politicking, and I'm sure it's already been discussed as far as what the tiebreaker is concerned. Is it strictly winning percentage? Is it based on losses, and then it goes to tiebreaker? I personally don't know.
think it's been publicized, though, because I was looking for it, youngster.
In the history of my sports knowledge tells me it's always been based on winning percentage. But, again, we've never had a year like this. So I don't know.
No, and I was trying to find COVID tiebreaker Big Ten. I couldn't find it. Maybe I wasn't looking hard enough.
I don't know. I'd have to look into it, but it could be very interesting. That also involves Northwestern losing to Illinois, so I don't think it comes down to that. But, yeah, this game, Wisconsin at Iowa, I think
I'm not going to lock anything.
This could be very, very, very low scoring because you've got a new starting quarterback at Iowa. They want to run the football first, and if they're picking up 2-3 yards a carry, and then they're asking their new quarterback to throw on third and medium to long against Wisconsin, good luck. And again, Wisconsin just scored 6 points against Indiana. Iowa, you could certainly make a case, has a better defense than Indiana. So you could see another 6, 7, 10, 13-point output by Wisconsin.
Yeah, this could be like a 13-10 game.
Yeah. I don't think that's
now,
crazy.
The odds makers are giving the Badger defense big kudos. Huge kudos. I mean, to say -1, I mentioned it, it's almost like they're saying, hey, Wisconsin can go to Iowa and win.
Oh, yeah.
And, again, Graham Mertz is going to progress, and maybe he'll learn from what Indiana did, but I like that Iowa defense better than Indiana's defense. Now, offensively, like you said, I think Wisconsin can hold them to 2 scores, 17 points maybe. I mean, even when that Badger defense is top-notch, teams can score 14 or 20 points on them. That's just the way college football is. It's built that way. That Badger defense is good, but, man, I don't know.
My gut tells me that Wisconsin has better quarterback play. I like Mertz over Petras. I like Wisconsin's running game more than Iowa's. I think I do. And then, playmaker-wise, I think it's fairly even. I like Amir Smith-Marset for Iowa, but I think it's pretty even. And then defensively, honestly, I like Wisconsin's defense more than Iowa. So, I
want them to win.
Wisconsin.
Don't get me wrong.
I think Wisconsin's better than Iowa. I think Wisconsin's better than Iowa. So, if I had
Wisconsin's
to pick,
going to win?
Honestly, if I had to put money on it, I would put money on Wisconsin to bounce back after losing and beating Iowa.
You want me to make that my 4th parlay team? I'll put the Badgers in there. I don't think it's lock worthy, but if I had to bet, I would put money on Wisconsin over Iowa. That's just okay. So we're not going to lock it, but guess what? I shouldn't do this. but I'll probably add the fourth team to the parlay. I'll add Wisconsin because they're going to get 1 point. They're going to get one. That's not a lot of points. Could Wisconsin win? Yes, they could. But I also saw how confused Graham Mertz got against an Indiana defense that is not as good as Iowa's defense. So will they get stymied again in the red zone? And you can't kick field goals and win football games. Just can't.
You might in this game.
You could. You could.
I hear what you're saying.
So we got 3 locks, though, huh?
Yes. 3 locks. Rutgers
Wow.
+9, Minnesota +10.5, Indiana -9.5. So got some decent little point spreads in there.
Yeah.
I like it.
I
think we win one.
That could fatten my pocket because I'm going to take Wisconsin, too, and they're an underdog also. So that's 3 underdogs in a 4-team parlay. Yeah, I could fatten my pocket a little bit.
Yes, you could.
Sounds good. All right, what else
Yes,
we
you
got,
could.
youngster?
That is it. I'm excited for college basketball to start, but it'll be interesting to see how this the rest of the football season plays out. Hopefully we get to see Ohio State or by some miracle Indiana make the playoff. But, I'm certainly gunning to see at least Ohio State in there.
Yeah, like we said, we need a Big Ten team in there, especially on the Interpeak Coffee virtual studio line that supports our Big Ten show. We definitely need a Big Ten school in the playoff. Otherwise, what do we talk about on Go Big or Go Home? Basketball, which is okay. I'm okay with basketball. But I want to talk football at least until January. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Or at least for the next 2 weeks, and then whatever the 2 weeks they have off or whatever it is before the playoffs starts. So We'll see what happens. All right, youngster, we're going to let the fans go. We're going to let them rock and roll out of here. Licorice to all the fans. Licorice to all the fans because the youngster does not like licorice. I did not know that about you. I learned something I learned something every day, every week. For 5 years, I learned something about the youngster. And you learned last week about me. I like house, too.
There we go.
I learned this week. You don't like licorice.
Yep.
I'll bring the licorice.
I'll
bring the licorice for myself as we watch out. All right, folks. Hope you enjoyed the show today. For the youngster, I am the old man. Thank you for listening in on the Interpeak virtual studio line. We'll get back at you next week. Same place, same time. Have a good day, everyone.